It was about 7 years ago. Elsa and I were in Colorado at one of these conferences and wound up at a dinner where I was seated next to Al Gore, the former vice president. Now, sitting next to Al Gore at dinner, let's be honest, it's unpleasant. And if you know anything about Gore's biography, before he went into politics, he was a journalist and practiced journalism. And it turns out he thinks he invented that also. So we're sitting there, and I had written 2 of the 4 Bush books, and he started grinding on me about the books. Said, why don't you come out against Bush in the Iraq War? And I said, look, I'm just trying to find out what happened. He said, oh, horse shit. Actually, it was more than that. And he said, I remember the Watergate stories. You and Carl Bernstein wrote those. You came out against Nixon and the crimes of Watergate. And I said, no, actually, we tried to stick to the facts. And he said, look, Buster, I read those stories. I said, I wrote those stories. Not necessarily a man of self-doubt. Didn't move the needle for Gore at all. He had read them. And anyway, we got to a much more interesting subject, which was at the core of journalism. How much do we know about what really goes on? And something we report, it's true. You get up in the morning and you wonder what you don't know and what's being hidden. And so I just asked, said, you were there for 8 years in the Clinton presidency, in the West Wing, and now it's 5 years after. There have been endless coverage, the Whitewater scandal, the Lewinsky scandal, all kinds of books. I'd written some of them. Marinus had, all kinds of people had written about it. So what percentage of what is significant or interesting do we now know? And he said, 1%. Well, of course, I died. And I have to confess to having an unclean thought. Because when he said 1%, I immediately thought, is it possible there are that many women we don't know about? Could be a big number. And then I just asked, well, suppose you wrote a tell-all memoir, and then he got on his high horse. I'd never write a tell-all memoir. Suppose you did. Then how much would we know about what went on that's interesting or of consequence? And he said, 2%. Now, that's just Gore being Gore, but the interesting thing, what you have to do is develop a method, have the luxury and the patience, which I thank the Washington Post for, to really try to dig into things, and you need to be at the right place at the right time. The first book I did on Obama is Obama's Wars, and about how he made his decisions in Afghanistan. And what he did, he decided he was going to add 30,000 troops, and in the secret memo to all of the members of his cabinet, he said, I'm adding 30,000 troops, this is in 2009, but then we're going to start withdrawing them in 2011. Now, and you talk to the generals in confidence, and the generals will say, you can't say we're going to add 30,000 troops and then commit to withdrawing them 18 months later. It doesn't work. War is not like that. War does not work on a timetable. And I was having breakfast with one of the world leaders, prime minister of one of our key allies. And we talked about Obama. And he said he likes him, he's smart, cares, has really, as one of Obama's age said, the armor of a good heart. I think Obama has that. But then this leader said, but no one's afraid of him. And my heart sank, because that, unfortunately, is the case. And you have to, particularly in this world is not the way people would like to think it should be. It is a very dangerous world, and if given the military force we have, you have to scare people. And if you are working in an environment where no one's scared, you send a message of weakness. Now, what's happened to the media? Why is there so much disappointment in the media? And part of it's the internet, the impatience in speed. Give me headlines, just give me a tweet that explains that we can reduce everything to 140 characters. I was talking to a reporter the other day from another news organization who was saying, I asked, well, when you go out for an interview, and he said, oh no, I don't go out for interviews. And I said, you don't? He said, no, it's all done on the computer, all email. Everything is done on the computer. He said, sometimes there is the intimacy of the telephone, but never a face-to-face interview. We've become lazy in the media. And I put myself in that category. I was trying to think the last time I went for an interview, knocked on somebody's door at night without an appointment. And I kept shuffling back in memory, and it was 2007, doing the fourth Bush book, and there was a general who would not talk. I sent messages, emails, phone messages, intermediaries, radio, silence. And so I found out where he lived in the Washington area. When's the best time to go try to talk to a four-star general at his home when you don't have an appointment? When would you go? Pardon? Somebody said at night? Yes. Not in the morning. Never. He's out doing PT. He's thinking of the day. Turns out the best time to visit a four-star general without an appointment is 8:15 on a Tuesday night. You don't want to do Monday because it's the beginning of the week. You don't want to do the end of the week. You don't want to crowd it in there. And so you pick a Tuesday. So I knock on his door and stand there. He opens the door and he looks at me and he says, "Are you still doing this shit?" And he meant it. Sorry to quote him accurately. And then he looked at me, and I did my kind of, I'm not going to say anything, fingernail being dug in to remind me to shut up and be poker-faced. And he looks at me, and then he got a disappointed look on his face. Not, I think, in me, but himself, because with 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and he went, "Come on in." And sat for 2 hours and answered most of the questions. Why? Because somebody showed up. We're not showing up. And all of the legitimate criticism of the media, we don't get out of the offices. We don't talk to people. The fact that Trump carried the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania is stunning. Political fact that overturns the whole concept of the polling and everyone's expectations. But we did it, and we missed it because we didn't show up. We didn't, you ask a political reporter in Washington, have you been to Wisconsin? Wisconsin, yeah, where's that? Is that, oh, that's that state above Illinois. We just are not doing it, and we're paying a price. Anyone remember the great Robin Williams movie, Dead Poets Society, 25, where he played a subversive instructor in a boys' prep school? And a terrific movie. And at one point, Robin Williams gets up on his desk in class and says, "I stand on my desk to remind myself that we need to find new ways to think about things. And that's the world we're in. In the media, I think in everywhere in the country, so many parts of the country, so many professions are going through a convulsion, and we need to find new ways to think about things.